The alien stood by the window and looked at the human ship. His name was Kalen, and he was a scientist from a planet far away. He had 3 eyes and blue skin. For many weeks, he had been watching the humans who came to visit the space station. These humans were strange, very strange. Kalen turned when the door opened. His friend Mira walked in. She looked worried. She held a small computer in her hands. "I finished studying the humans while they sleep," Mira said. Her voice was shaking a little. "Kalen, something is wrong with them. Very wrong." "What did you find?" Kalen asked. "Their brains do not rest when they sleep. They have wild thoughts. They see things that are not real. Every single night, Kalen. Every night their minds show them crazy pictures." Kalen felt cold. In his world, sleep meant peace. The mind would rest. The body would heal. But humans were different. "Show me," he said. Mira touched her computer. Pictures appeared in the air. They showed brain scans of a sleeping human. The brain was very active. Too active. It looked like the human was awake, but he was sleeping. "This is Lieutenant Jake Murphy," Mira explained. "We watched him sleep for 8 hours. During that time, his brain created impossible scenarios. He dreamed he was falling from the sky. He dreamed that monsters were chasing him. He dreamed his teeth were falling out. He even dreamed he was dying." "That would drive anyone mad," Kalen whispered. "Yes. But when he woke up, he just wrote about it in his journal. Then he went to work like nothing happened." A voice came from behind them. "We call it dreaming." Kalen turned fast. A human woman stood in the doorway. She wore a blue uniform. Her name tag said Captain Laura Hayes. She walked into the room without asking permission. "You watched my crew sleep," Laura said. She did not sound angry. She sounded calm. "That was not polite. But I understand. You are scared of us." "We are not scared," Kalen lied. "Yes, you are. You think we are crazy because we dream." Laura walked to the window. She looked at her ship with pride. "You are right to worry. But you are wrong about what it means," Mira spoke up. "Captain, your people experience terrible things every night." "How can that be normal?" Laura smiled. "Every human dreams. Some nights we fly. Some nights we fall. Some nights we face our worst fears. Some nights beautiful things happen. Some nights terrible things happen. And when we wake up, we learn from it." She turned to face the 2 aliens. "Our dreams teach us things. They help us practice for the future. They show us problems before they happen. They let us be brave when we are safe in our beds, but the fear," Kalen said, "the horror, how do you survive it?" "We wake up," Laura said simply. "Every bad dream ends. Every nightmare stops when morning comes. We learn that we can survive anything. Even our own minds." She walked closer to Kalen. "Do you want to know the truth? Humans are not afraid of the dark. We have walked through darkness every night of our lives. We know darkness. We understand it. And that makes us strong." Kalen looked at the brain scans again. The human mind was so active, so chaotic, so strange. But maybe Laura was right. Maybe this chaos was not weakness. Maybe it was strength. "Why did you come here, Captain?" Mira asked. "I came to tell you something important," Laura said. Her face became serious. "You are studying us because you think we are dangerous. You think our dreams make us unstable. But let me tell you what human dreams really are." She pointed at the brain scans. "Every night human children dream of monsters under their beds. They dream of things in the closet. They dream of being lost. And what do? We teach them to be brave. We tell them stories about heroes who fight monsters. We show them that fear can be defeated." "You train your children to face fear?" Kalen asked. He could not believe it. "Yes. By the time a human is grown, they have faced fear thousands of times. In dreams and stories. In games, we practice being afraid so that real danger does not break us." Laura moved to the door. Before she left, she turned back. "You have built your civilization on logic and peace. That is beautiful. But the universe is not always logical. The universe is not always peaceful. Someday you might face something that logic cannot explain, something that peace cannot stop." She looked at both aliens. "When that day comes, you will want humans at your side. Because we have already faced the impossible. We face it every night. And we always wake up ready for more." The door closed behind her. Kalen and Mira stood in silence. They looked at the brain scans again. The chaotic patterns, the wild activity, the strange dreams. "She is right to scare us," Mira said quietly. "Why?" Kalen asked. Because a species that practices horror every night is not a species you want as an enemy. Kalen thought about this. He thought about his own people. They valued calm. They valued order. They avoided conflict. But humans were different. Humans walked through nightmares and called it normal. Outside the window, the human ship waited in the darkness of space. It looked peaceful now, but Kalen knew the truth. Inside that ship were creatures who dreamed in darkness. Creatures who practiced dying every night. Creatures who turned fear into strength. Humanity had joined the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 weeks passed. Scientists from many different planets came to study the humans. They wanted to understand how human minds worked. They wanted to know if humans were safe. The research center was full of strange machines and computers. Dr. Felix led the research team. He was from a water planet and had to wear a special suit to breathe. He had been studying alien minds for 40 years, but he had never seen anything like humans. They create fear on purpose, Felix told the other scientists. His voice sounded confused through his breathing mask. Humans have entire industries that make scary things, movies, books, games, all designed to make them afraid. The room became very quiet. One scientist, a tall creature with 6 arms named Tessa, raised her hand. They choose to be scared? For fun? Yes, look at this. Felix showed pictures on the big screen. The images were from human entertainment. Monsters with sharp teeth. Ghosts floating through walls. Creatures from space attacking cities. Blood and darkness everywhere. This is what they watch for enjoyment, Felix said. They have been making these scary stories for thousands of years. They write about the end of the world. They imagine monsters under beds. They create demons and ghosts, and they share these nightmares with each other. A human voice spoke from the back of the room. You are missing the point. Everyone turned. Lieutenant Jake Murphy stood by the door. He had volunteered to help with the research. He was young, maybe 25 years old, with short brown hair and a friendly face. What point are we missing? Felix asked. Jake walked to the front of the room. You think horror entertainment is about suffering. It is not. It is about learning. He pointed at the scary images. Every monster you see there teaches us something. Vampires taught us about disease and infection. Zombies taught us about pandemics. Alien invaders taught us about being ready for the unknown. Ghost stories taught us about loss and memory. Tessa looked confused. But why make yourself afraid to learn these things? Because fear is a teacher, Jake explained. When you are afraid, your brain pays attention. Your body gets ready. Your mind remembers. If we only learned during calm times, we would not remember the lessons when danger came. He pulled out his phone and showed them a picture. It was a drawing done by a small child. The picture showed a tiny stick figure person facing a huge black shape with red eyes. My daughter Amy drew this when she was 4 years old, Jake said. She told me there was a monster in her room. She was very scared. But we did not tell her monsters were not real. We told her she was brave enough to face them. You made a child face fear? Felix asked. He sounded upset. We taught a child that she could face fear, Jake corrected. We read her stories about brave knights and clever heroes. We played games where she was the monster hunter. We showed her that fear was not the end. It was just the beginning. Jake changed the picture on his phone. Now it showed Amy at age 8, smiling and holding a book. By the time she was 8, she was writing her own monster stories. She turned her nightmares into adventures. She took control of her fears. The scientists whispered to each other. This was hard to understand. Their species protected children from fear. They made sure the young ones felt safe always. But humans did the opposite. Let me show you something else, Jake said. He connected his phone to the big screen. A video started playing. It showed humans doing dangerous things. Jumping from planes. Climbing tall mountains. Diving deep underwater. Fighting in competitions. Humans seek out danger, Jake explained. We climb mountains because they are tall. We explore caves because they are dark. We dive deep because we want to see what is down there. Other species avoid risk. Humans run toward it. Why? Tessa asked. Why would you choose danger? Because danger makes us better, Jake said. Every time we face something scary and survive, we grow stronger. Our ancestors climbed down from trees and walked on the ground with predators. They crossed oceans in tiny boats. They explored frozen lands and burning deserts. Humans have always walked into the darkness to see what is there. Felix looked at all the data they had collected. Brain scans, psychological tests, cultural studies. It all showed the same thing. Humans were different. Very different. What happens if your horror stories become real? Felix asked quietly. What if real monsters appear? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a smile that said he knew something the others did not. Then we will be ready, Jake said. Because we have already fought those monsters 1,000,000 times in our minds. We have written books about how to defeat them. We have made movies showing their weaknesses. We have practiced their destruction in games and dreams. He looked at each scientist. You study us because you are afraid. You think we are crazy. Maybe you are right. But being a little crazy means we can think of solutions you would never imagine. It means we can face problems you would run from. It means when true horror comes, and it will come, we will not freeze in shock. We will fight, Jake continued, because that is what humans do. We fight monsters. We always have. We always will. The room was silent. The scientists looked at each other. They had come here to study a strange species. Instead, they had learned something terrifying. Humanity was not weak because of their nightmares. They were strong because of them. Felix saved all the research data. He would send it to the council. They needed to know the truth about humans. These creatures practiced horror like other species practiced music. They trained in fear like others trained in art. They had weaponized their own nightmares, and somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, something old and hungry began to move. It had been sleeping for 1,000,000 years, but now it was waking up. And soon, the galaxy would learn why humanity needed their nightmares. The universe was about to discover that human horror stories were not entertainment. They were training manuals. The council meeting happened 6 months after humans joined the galaxy. Leaders from 50 different planets sat in a huge room. Kalen stood at the front. His job was to present the findings about humanity. He was nervous. We have studied the humans carefully, Kalen began. What we found changes everything we know about intelligent life. He showed pictures and data on the big screens. Humans have what we call dark imagination. They spend large parts of their lives thinking about bad things that might happen. They plan for disasters. They prepare for wars. They imagine their own deaths. A leader from the warrior planet Korma stood up. His name was General Victor. He was big and strong. Are you saying humans are a danger to us? I am saying they are different, Kalen replied. Every species here values peace and cooperation. But humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Their brains developed to imagine worst-case scenarios. Kalen showed more images, old human paintings of battles, books about the end of the world, movies about monsters, religious texts about hell and demons, scientific papers about extinction. For their entire history, humans have been obsessed with destruction, Kalen said. They imagine it. They write about it. They create art from it. But this is not madness. This is their strength. Commander Gary Rogers from the human diplomatic team asked to speak. The council allowed it. Gary was older, maybe 50 years old. He had gray hair and calm eyes. He walked to the front with confidence. Kalen is correct, but he only shows you half the truth, Gary said. Yes, humans think about terrible things, but we also think about solutions. For every nightmare, we imagine 10 ways to survive it. For every monster, we create a hero to fight it. Gary showed his own pictures. Humans rescuing people from floods, doctors saving lives, engineers building amazing things, artists making beauty from pain, soldiers protecting the weak, parents teaching children to be brave. Our darkness makes us strong, Gary explained. Because we imagine the worst, we prepare for it. Because we dream about danger every night, we do not panic when danger becomes real. We have practiced. We have trained. We have already survived the apocalypse in our minds. Mira, who had helped study the humans, spoke up. Commander Rogers, our research shows that humans feel real terror during nightmares. How can terror make you stronger? Because we wake up, Gary said simply. Every nightmare ends. Every bad dream stops. Every dark thought passes. And each time we wake up, we learn that we can survive our own fears. We learn that we are stronger than we think. He looked around the room at all the different species. You are all afraid of us. You see our dreams and call us insane. But what you call insanity, we call preparation. What you call horror, we call training. What you call darkness, we call home. A beautiful alien with silver skin named Luna spoke. Her people were artists and poets. Commander, surely there must be limits. Things too terrible even for human minds. Gary became serious. Yes, we can be broken. We can be hurt. But when a human breaks, we do not just fall apart. We study why we broke. We learn from it. We develop ways to help others who break. We turn our wounds into wisdom. He walked closer to the council members. Let me tell you a story. On Earth, we have had terrible wars. Millions died. Cities burned. Families were destroyed. After each war, we could have given up. We could have decided that humans were too violent to survive. But we did not give up. Gary continued. We studied war. We learned from it. We created laws to prevent it. We built organizations to keep peace. We turned our worst impulses into lessons about how to be better. That is what humans do. We face darkness and we learn. General Victor crossed his arms. You speak of facing darkness. But what if real darkness comes? What if something appears that your nightmares never prepared you for? Gary smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then we will adapt. Because that is our other gift. Humans do not just imagine horrors. We imagine solutions to horrors we have never seen. We can think of ways to fight enemies that do not exist yet. He pulled up a document on the screen. For 200 years, Earth's military has had a special division. Their job is to prepare for things that should be impossible. Invasions from other dimensions. Attacks by beings made of energy. Reality itself breaking down. We have plans for all of it. The council room became very quiet. Every leader stared at the screen. The document showed thousands of scenarios, each one more strange and terrible than the last. And for each scenario, humans had written detailed response plans. You prepared for the impossible, Kalen said softly. You made plans for things that cannot happen. We made plans for things that should not happen, Gary corrected. There is a difference. The universe is big and strange. Who knows what is possible? Better to be ready for anything than to be surprised by something. Luna looked scared now. Commander Rogers, are you saying that humans have been preparing for cosmic horror since before you met us? Since before we left our planet, Gary confirmed. Since before we built our first spaceship. Since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. He turned to face all the council members directly. You want to know what makes humans special? We have spent 50,000 years asking what if? What if the dead walk? What if monsters are real? What if reality breaks? What if nightmares come true? And for each question, we imagined answers. General Victor spoke again. You think humanity is ready for anything? No, Gary said. We think humanity is ready to try anything. There is a difference. We might fail. We might die. But we will not freeze in fear. We will not run away. We will face whatever comes and we will fight it with everything we have. The council voted to accept humans as full members. Every single leader voted yes. Not because they loved humans. Not because they trusted humans. But because they understood something important. The galaxy was vast. Space was full of mysteries. And someday something terrible might come from the darkness. When that day arrived, they would need the one species that had spent their entire existence preparing to fight monsters. They would need humans, the species that dreamed in darkness, the species that turned nightmares into weapons, the species that looked at horror and said, "Let me try." That night, far away at the edge of known space, a star went dark. Then another, then 10 more. Something was coming. And soon humanity's nightmares would have to face something worse than nightmares. They would have to face reality. The warning came from the far edge of space. A small research station sent a short message. The signal was weak and full of static, but the words were clear enough to frighten everyone who heard them. Something is coming. Not ships, not weapons, something else. The darkness is moving. Stars are disappearing. Send help, send anyone, send the humans. Then the signal stopped. The station went silent. Within hours, every research post in that area of space went dark. No explosions, no battles, no distress calls. They just stopped existing. The emergency council meeting lasted only minutes before everyone started shouting. Leaders screamed at each other in fear. Scanner data showed something impossible. A region of space where reality itself was falling apart, and it was spreading. Kalen watched his organized world collapse. His people had rules for everything. War, natural disasters, political problems. But they had no rules for reality breaking. He did not know what to do. Captain Laura Hayes sat in the human area. She looked calm while everyone else panicked. She had been expecting something like this. Not the exact details, but the general shape of it. Humans had spent thousands of years imagining cosmic horror. They had written books about it, made movies about it, warned about it. The galaxy had not listened. They thought humans were just pessimistic. Now they were learning that human pessimism was just good pattern recognition. "Order," Kalen shouted. The room became quiet. Everyone was scared. Kalen turned to Laura. "Captain Hayes, does your species have experience with this?" Laura stood up. She moved with perfect control. "We have imagined it. We have written about it. We have made movies about it. We have never faced it in real life. But yes, Ambassador, we have plans." General Victor slammed his fist on the table. "Plans for the impossible? How can you plan for something that breaks the laws of physics?" "Because humans assume the laws of physics are more like guidelines," Laura replied. "Lieutenant Jake Murphy, please show them the files." Jake activated the big display. The room filled with nightmare scenarios, holes between dimensions, beings that could warp reality, diseases that affected the mind instead of the body, threats that had no physical form. Each one was carefully labeled with response plans. "For 2 centuries, the human military has maintained a division for impossible threats," Jake explained. "We have war-gamed everything. Invasions from other dimensions, attacks by sentient energy, reality becoming hostile. Every major human government has secret plans for these scenarios." Mira stared at the display. "You prepared for reality to fail?" "We prepared for possibilities," Laura said. "We do not know what we face, but we know how to respond. Step 1, stay calm. Step 2, gather information. Step 3, adapt and survive." She brought up a map showing where the stations had disappeared. "This thing is spreading at a steady rate. We have about 3 days before it reaches inhabited planets. I propose we send a scout mission to collect data." "And who would volunteer for such a mission?" Kalen asked quietly. "Who would fly into that darkness?" Laura smiled. For the first time, Kalen understood something important. Humans did not prepare to run from nightmares. They prepared to hunt them. "We would," Laura said. "My ship and crew have been ready for this moment since we left Earth. We have trained for impossible scenarios. We have practiced dying in simulations 1,000 times. We have faced every fear our species can imagine." She looked at each council member. "You built your civilizations on logic and order. That is wonderful, but you forgot something. The universe does not care about logic. The universe is huge and strange and full of things that should not exist. That is why you need us." Lieutenant Sam Park, the ship engineer, stepped forward. He was short but confident. "Captain Hayes is right. We have been crazy enough to imagine the impossible. Now let us be crazy enough to survive it." The council voted. Every single member voted to approve the human mission. As leaders left to prepare their people for bad news, Kalen walked up to Laura. "You are not afraid," he said. "Oh, I am terrified," Laura admitted. "But terror is just another feeling. We will fly into that darkness. We will face whatever nightmare waits there, and if we can, we will bring back the information you need to survive." "And if you cannot survive?" Kalen asked. Laura's eyes held a darkness that Kalen now understood. It was not madness. It was humanity's greatest weapon. "Then we make sure our last message tells you exactly what killed us. Because that is what humans do. We go into the darkness and we take notes. Even if we die screaming, we die learning. And someone somewhere will use that knowledge to survive." The human ship left the station 2 hours later. Everyone watched it go. The ship looked small against the vast space. But inside were creatures who had spent their entire evolution learning to face the impossible. On the bridge, Laura looked at her crew. Jake at Tactical, Sam at Engineering, Dr. Susan Wright at Medical, Lieutenant Ben Cole at Science. All of them were calm. All of them were ready. "We all know what we signed up for," Laura said. "We all knew this day might come. We are flying towards something that should not exist. It might kill us. But if it does, we die doing what humans do best." "What is that, Captain?" Susan asked. Laura smiled. "We die learning. We die fighting. We die making sure others can survive. Every human who ever lived has carried that responsibility. Now it is our turn." Ben checked his instruments. "Captain, sensors are going crazy. Whatever is out there, it is not following any rules we understand." "Good," Laura said. "If it followed rules, we would not need to be here." "Jake, arm all weapons. Sam, prepare emergency protocols. Susan, set up medical for worst-case scenarios. Ben, record everything. Every sensor reading. Every visual. Every strange thing you see. If we die, that data might save millions. The crew worked quickly. They had practiced this 100 times in training. But this was real. This was not a drill. This was what humans had been preparing for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered what looked back. Approaching the edge of the phenomenon, Ben reported, reality readings are becoming unstable. Captain, I am seeing things that cannot exist. Space is folding. Time is moving wrong. The laws of physics are breaking down. Then we adapt to new laws, Laura said calmly. That is what humans do. We learn, we adapt, we survive. The ship moved forward into the darkness. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath. Ahead of them, something impossible waited. And in between, a crew of humans prepared to do what their species had always done. They would face the nightmare. They would learn its secrets. And they would teach the universe that humanity's darkness was not a weakness. It was a shield. It was a sword. It was the one thing that could fight monsters from beyond reality, because humans had spent 50,000 years dreaming in darkness. And now finally that darkness would meet something worse than nightmares. It would meet humanity's will to survive. The ship reached the edge of the impossible zone 2 days later. Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge and watched the view screen show something that should not exist. Space itself looked wrong. Stars flickered like candles about to go out. Reality seemed to bend and twist. And at the center, something massive moved through dimensions that human eyes were never meant to see. Sensor readings make no sense, Ben Cole reported from the science station. His voice was shaking. The thing out there registers as matter and energy at the same time. It is present and absent. It is like trying to measure a contradiction. Dr. Susan Wright had been analyzing data for hours. She looked up from her computer with fear in her eyes. Captain, I know what this is. Or at least I know what it is like. Explain, Laura commanded. It is consciousness without a body, Susan said. Intelligence without biology. It is pure thought that exists without anything to contain it, and it is hungry. Laura felt something cold in her stomach. She had read enough horror books to recognize this. It feeds on awareness, on perception itself. Exactly, Susan confirmed. The other species experienced it first because their minds work in organized patterns. They think in logic and order. To this entity, they are like a meal. It consumes their perception of reality. Once it eats their perception, it eats them. Jake Murphy looked up from the weapons station. What about humans? Susan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We are poison to it. Our dreams are chaos. Our thoughts are contradictory. We imagine things that cannot exist and believe in them anyway. We hold opposing ideas at the same time. We are walking paradoxes. To something that feeds on ordered consciousness, we taste like radioactive waste. Laura understood immediately. Human madness, their endless nightmares, their ability to dream in darkness, it was all a defense. Evolution had prepared them for predators they never knew existed. Predators that ate minds, can we fight it? She asked Jake. Normal weapons are useless, he replied. But if this thing eats consciousness, then we need to weaponize thought itself. Sam Park, the engineer, stood up suddenly. His eyes were wide. The communication amplifiers. The ones we built to talk with telepathic species. We could modify them to broadcast human thought patterns. Broadcast our nightmares, Laura said slowly. Turn our darkness into a weapon. Yes. If our natural thoughts are toxic to this thing, imagine what concentrated human imagination could do. Every horror story, every nightmare, every fear we ever mastered, all of it amplified and aimed like a gun. The bridge was silent for a moment. Everyone understood what Sam was suggesting. They would weaponize the very thing that made other species fear them. They would prove every concern the galaxy had about human psychology. They would become exactly what the Council was afraid of. And they would do it anyway, because it was necessary. Begin modifications, Laura ordered. All crew prepare for mental combat. This is not a drill. We are about to fight something using only our minds. 3 hours later, the ship transmitted its plan back to the station. Kalen's response came quickly. His voice sounded horrified. Captain Hayes, this is insane. You want to connect human minds directly to this entity? Not connect, Laura corrected. Attack! We are going to show it every nightmare humanity has ever had. We will force-feed it horrors that would make any sane being go mad. And we can do this because we are the only species insane enough to have nightmares ready to use as weapons. The psychological damage to your crew, Kalen protested. Will be severe, Laura admitted. But we trained for this. We prepared for this. Our entire species spent thousands of years learning to navigate our own darkness. Now we find out if that was enough. The amplifiers came online at midnight ship time. Laura sat in her chair with a neural crown attached to her head. Similar crowns connected to every crew member. Together they would become one collective nightmare. All stations ready, Jake called out. Laura took a deep breath. Start transmission. Show it what humans dream in the dark. The amplifiers blazed with light. The ship became a beacon of concentrated human consciousness. Through her neural crown, Laura felt her crew's minds joining with hers. Their fears and nightmares flowed together into one unified weapon. They showed the entity humanity's deepest horrors. The fear of being buried alive. The terror of losing your mind. The nightmare of watching loved ones die. The dread of the world ending. The horror of existence itself. Every phobia. Every paranoia. Every dark fantasy humans ever conceived. They broadcast it all directly into the entity's alien mind, and the entity screamed. It was not a sound heard with ears. It was a feeling that went straight to the soul. A psychic shriek from something that had never encountered poison before. The entity had consumed countless civilizations. It had fed on the ordered thoughts of logical species, but now it was drowning in human chaos. The impossible zone began to collapse. Reality started working correctly again. The entity fled, retreating to whatever dimension it came from. It was wounded by something it never expected. A species that had weaponized their own madness. When the amplifiers powered down, Laura found herself on her knees on the floor. Her crew was in similar states around her. They had survived, but the cost showed in their eyes. They had stared into their collective darkness. They had used their own nightmares as ammunition. They were changed. Status report, she managed to say. Her voice was weak. The impossible zone is disappearing, Ben reported. His hands were shaking. Reality is returning to normal across all affected areas. Any deaths? Laura asked. No deaths, Jake replied. But we all need serious therapy, Laura laughed. The sound was somewhere between victory and hysteria. That is what makes us human. We survive our nightmares, then we go to therapy. We face horror, then we talk about our feelings. We save the galaxy, then we process our trauma. She sent a short message back to the station. Threat eliminated. Entity has withdrawn. Recommend all species maintain mental health protocols. Humans will establish monitoring at the edge of known space. Hours later, Kalen's response arrived. His message was simple but powerful. Captain Hayes, the Council thanks you. Your species saved countless lives today. But we also understand now. Humanity does not dream in darkness despite being civilized. You dream in darkness because it makes you civilized. Your nightmares are not a flaw. They are your greatest strength. Laura sat in her private room. She looked out at the stars that now worked correctly again. She thought about all the scary movies she watched as a child, all the horror books she read, all the nightmares that woke her up afraid. They had all been training, practice for a day when nightmares would walk, and humanity would need to stand against them. She started recording a log entry. Today we proved that humanity belongs in the galaxy not despite our darkness but because of it. We think differently because we dream differently. We survive because we have already died 1,000 times in our imagination. She paused. Other species fear our nightmares, but they do not understand. We are not unstable. We are prepared. We turned our madness into a shield that protects everyone. Outside, the ship turned toward home. Inside, a crew had stared into the abyss and made the abyss run away. Because they were human. And humans had spent 50,000 years learning to fight monsters. Real or imagined, it made no difference. They were ready either way. 3 months after the incident, the galaxy had changed. News of what happened spread to every planet. Every species now knew the truth about humans. They were not just another member of the galactic community. They were the shield against darkness. The council met again. This time, the mood was different. There was no fear. There was no suspicion. There was respect, and perhaps a little bit of awe. Kalen stood before the assembly. We called this meeting to discuss humanity's role in our civilization. After recent events, I believe we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew. Captain Laura Hayes stood with her crew. They all looked tired. The psychological toll had been heavy, but they were healing. Humans always healed. It was what they did. For months, we studied humans with suspicion, Kalen continued. We saw their dreams and called them mad. We watched their entertainment and called them violent. We examined their psychology and called them unstable. We were wrong about all of it. He turned to face Laura. Humans are not mad. They are prepared. They are not violent. They are capable. They are not unstable. They are adaptable. What we mistook for weakness is actually their greatest strength. General Victor stood. The big warrior looked humbled. My people pride ourselves on strength. We train for combat from youth. We study warfare for generations. But we were helpless against that entity. Our strength meant nothing. Our weapons were useless. Only human darkness could fight it. Luna, the silver-skinned artist, spoke next. My people create beauty. We value harmony and peace, but beauty cannot fight every battle. Peace cannot solve every problem. Sometimes the universe requires something else, something humans uniquely possess. What do we possess? Laura asked. The will to face the impossible, Luna replied. The courage to walk into darkness. The imagination to fight things that should not exist. You do not just survive horror, you master it. You turn it into strength. Mira approached the human crew. She had studied them for so long. Now she understood them. I want to apologize. We scanned your minds without permission. We treated you like test subjects. We were afraid of what we found. Jake Murphy smiled at her. You were right to be afraid. We are scary. But we are scary to your enemies, not to you. That is the difference. The council voted on a new proposal. Humanity would establish a special division. They would monitor the edges of known space. They would watch for threats that defied normal understanding. They would be the galaxy's early warning system and first response team for impossible dangers. They would be called the Nightmare Guard. The name was human. The mission was universal. After the meeting, Kaylin and Laura stood together by the observation window. They watched ships coming and going. The galaxy continued its business. Life went on. Do you think more threats will come? Kaylin asked. Yes, Laura said simply. The universe is vast. We have only explored a tiny portion of it. There are probably things out there worse than what we faced. Things we cannot imagine yet. And humans will face them. We will try. That is all anyone can do. Try. Fight. Learn. Survive. We might fail. We might die. But we will not give up. That is the human way. Kaylin was quiet for a moment. I used to think your nightmares were a curse. Now I understand they are a gift. Not just to you, but to all of us. Every species has gifts, Laura said. Your people bring logic. The Korma bring strength. The Solari bring art. We bring the ability to face darkness. Together we are stronger than any of us alone. She turned to face him. But you need to understand something. Humans will always dream in darkness. We will always imagine terrible things. We will always prepare for the worst. That is who we are. You cannot change it. You should not want to change it. I would never want to change it, Kaylin replied. Your darkness saved us all. The human crew returned to their ship. They would rest for a few weeks. They would undergo therapy. They would process what they experienced. And then they would return to duty. Because that was what humans did. They faced trauma, they healed, and they stood ready to face it again if necessary. On the bridge, Laura gathered her crew one final time before they left the station. I want to say something. What we did was hard. It damaged us. We will carry those scars for the rest of our lives. But we saved billions of lives. We proved that humanity belongs in the stars. Sam Park raised his hand. Captain, do you think we will face more things like that entity? Probably, Laura said honestly. The universe is strange and vast. We have barely begun to explore it. There are probably thousands of horrors waiting out there, things that make that entity look tame. Then why do I feel excited instead of scared? Jake asked. Laura laughed. Because you are human. We are wired wrong. We face danger and feel alive. We confront horror and feel purpose. Other species run from nightmares. We run toward them with notebooks and weapons ready to learn and fight. Dr. Susan Wright smiled. My grandmother had a saying. She said humans are the only species that looks at the dark and says, I wonder what is in there instead of running away. Your grandmother was wise, Laura said. That curiosity, that bravery, that refusal to accept that something is impossible, that is what makes us human. That is what saved the galaxy, and that is what will save it again when the next nightmare comes. The ship departed the station. Behind them, the galaxy continued spinning. Trillions of beings lived their lives in peace and safety. Most of them would never know how close they came to oblivion. Most would never understand what humans did for them. But that was fine. Humans did not save the galaxy for recognition. They did it because it needed to be done. Because someone had to stand in the darkness. Because they were the only ones capable of doing it. 50 light-years away, at the edge of explored space, human ships began arriving. They would build stations there. They would watch and wait. They would be ready, because somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, other nightmares were stirring. Other impossibilities were waking. Other horrors were beginning their journey toward civilized space. But humanity would be ready. They had spent 50,000 years preparing. They had trained in their dreams every single night. They had faced every fear their minds could create. They were the children of a harsh world that demanded adaptation or death. They were the species that turned trauma into strength and nightmares into weapons. They were humanity. They dreamed in darkness and madness. And that darkness, that beautiful, terrible darkness, was exactly what the universe needed. In her quarters, Laura wrote one final log entry. We proved today that humanity has a place in the stars, not as conquerors, not as explorers, but as guardians. We stand watch in the darkness so others can live in the light. We face nightmares so others can dream peacefully. We carry the burden of horror so civilization can thrive. She finished the entry and looked out at the stars. They were beautiful. They were mysterious. They were full of wonders and horrors alike. And humans would face both with the same courage, the same curiosity, the same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried them from caves to stars. The darkness held no fear for humanity. They were born in it. They lived in it. They mastered it every night when they closed their eyes and dreamed. And now they would use it to protect everyone else, because that was what humans did. They walked into darkness and came back with light. They faced nightmares and came back with solutions. They stood against the impossible and made it possible to survive. The galaxy had its defenders now, and they were very, very good at their job.